I have been waiting for ages to build an awesome all-white gaming PC build that doesn't break the bank, and all the parts that I need are finally here to make this build happen. The aim is pretty simple: build a PC that looks and performs the part. I'll be walking you guys through all the parts that I picked and some alternatives, how to put it together from start right through to the finish line, and looking at performance a little bit later. Let's do this. The Asus ROG Swift PG49 WCD is an insane 49-inch super ultra-wide panel that packs a punch. With a vibrant QD OLED display, 0.03 millisecond response time and 144Hz refresh rate, this thing is crazy. The 1000 nits peak brightness, backed up with a custom heatsink design and improved airflow, keeps the panel bright and prevents burn-in, while a built-in KVM and 90 watts of USB-C power delivery makes this a great monitor for a multitude of applications. Learn more at the first links in the description below. I'm going to start things off by installing the CPU into the motherboard. Now you'll see here that this B650 AORUS Elite AX ICE looks to be right on theme, and of course supports all of the latest Ryzen 7000 processors without breaking the bank. This particular model is the 7600X, a modest 6-core 12-thread CPU that's really power efficient, has solid clock speeds and even a bit of overclockability. Is that a word? I'm not sure. Either way, you can push a couple more 100 megahertz through this chip if you want to get some extra performance, or run at stock speeds without too many problems. It's great for gaming in the latest titles, and 6 cores really is the minimum I'd say you need for a build like this nowadays. Those looking for a few more cores might consider the i5 13600 or 14600K, but they do run much hotter and are quite a piece more expensive. I am quite excited though to look at this motherboard in person. I've only seen photos online. Oh wow, I couldn't even finish my sentence. Look at that! I've honestly been waiting so long for a board with a white PCB, but Gigabyte, I have a question for you. Why couldn't you do white RAM DIMM slots? Really? Surely they make a white plastic molding for the RAM. Either way, that is absolutely stunning. In terms of the bits that matter though, you get the AM5 socket, a PCI Gen 4 slot for the graphics card, but PCI Gen 5 for the NVMe drive, DDR5 RAM support, plenty of power phases and cooling for those VRMs. That's going to enable a bit of overclocking later. And on the rear I/O, you've got your 10 gig USB-C, 2.5 gig Ethernet, loads of USB 3.2s and Wi-Fi 6 up top to give us super speedy networking speeds. It really does tick a lot of boxes, as I say, without being too expensive. You've probably all seen me install Ryzen processors before, but if not, lift the arm up, pull the socket up, add the CPU. Golden triangle is going to be up here on the top left-hand corner. Socket goes down, arm into place, black plastic. Keep that safe in case you've got an RMA board or anything like that. Also at this stage, going to pop in the RAM or the memory. And this is the bit of the build where I feel a bit conflicted, really. And the reason for that is because there are so many good DDR5 RAM kits that are not too expensive and work well for this build. Now, one example is this Lexar Lancer kit. I really like this stuff, had it in my personal rig for a little while, and it's certainly on the affordable side the last time that I checked. Similarly, T-Force's Delta DDR5 in the white kit especially is going to look great. It's a slightly lower profile, more gamery, angular style kit, and I even recently had this Lexar DDR5 kit in. Now, you can read our favourite DDR5 RAM kits over on the website to learn more about our top picks. But tying in with the theme, I think the best is probably this ToughRAM XG. I didn't realise quite how many silver accents there were on the board until the board arrived, and the thing that this RAM does really nice is actually ties all of those together. It is a bit more on the expensive side. Keeping with the budget for this build, you might want to consider something like this Lexar kit, which will cost you a little bit less money. I'll link all the options below though, so you can pick and choose for yourself. Second and fourth DIMM slots for the RAM in this build. Then you want to line the memory up with all your logos facing away from the CPU socket. Bit of pressure, yeah, lovely stuff. Repeat that for your other RAM DIMM. Nice. Already love how this thing is looking. I'm going to clear some space next because there's a bit of cooler prep we need to do, and of course install the M.2, and then we'll look at the case and PSU and other bits a little bit later. Speaking of storage, I've opted for the Samsung SSD 990 Pro. Now, I'm probably sounding like a boring broken record. This drive is so good and it's so affordable. I think 2 terabytes I saw for like $130 US. Amazing. And of course it means that you get loads of nice, fast, next generation storage. Of course, PCI Gen Gen 5 drives are starting to sort of come up now, but to be honest with you, they're actually kind of too quick. No one needs those sort of speeds, and for gaming, even a good Gen 3 drive will be more than fine. The extra speed of Gen 4 is nice though, and having a PC that feels definitely snappy and speedy when it comes to loading games up, running the games themselves, and booting up the PC in general is really important. Equally, going for a drive without a heatsink means we can hide it away and keep the theme of the build going along nicely, which is a good decision. Cooler-wise, I am going to prep the CPU cooler, and I've picked up this Thermaltake Snow TH280 V2 Ultra ARGB Sync. Whew, mouthful. One thing that's good about this cooler though is that it fits really well in the case for this build. And the case for this build is actually one of my favourite cases of the year and features in our upcoming roundup of the best cases of 2023. Now, this 280mm unit is going to keep the Ryzen 5 chip nice and cool. Although the Ryzen 5 does run significantly cooler than the i5 alternative, modern CPUs are still hot. A good cooling means we're obviously going to give ourselves overclocking headroom. Larger 140mm fans will keep the build more quiet. And to be honest, this just wasn't that expensive. So it made sense for this build. And I have to say, I think it looks absolutely awesome. All white apart from these little accents on the actual water block. Really, really nice. Now, I'm not going to install the main cooler head, but I am going to go ahead and prep the CPU cooler mounting hardware. And for that, I will need the instruction manual. Something not often read on the GeekaWhat channel, but I think with coolers, very important. So, Intel, AMD. Okay, even easier. So what this cooler is going to do, quite cleverly, is leverage these plastic brackets that are pre-installed onto the motherboard. So it's just a case of actually adding the AMD brackets to the water block over here first of all. According to the instruction manual, we need to use this bracket right here with this bag of screws and brackets. Take everything out. 2 of the thumb screws you can just keep to one side. Then just going to add these thumb screws and these retaining brackets to the actual water block adapter before sliding this onto the bottom of the water block. And as far as cooler prep goes, that's basically all we need to do. Move this film off as well. We don't need that. We want pure copper to be making contact with the CPU. And that is where the case can now come in. Now, I said earlier that this was one of my favourite cases of the year, and genuinely, it's really fantastic. The Ceres 500 was a large, kind of almost ATX full tower chassis, which I liked, but it was a bit big. The Ceres 300 is still an ATX case, but it's much more compact. You get mesh at the front, 140mm fans included as standard. Let me take it out of the box and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Can you see what I'm saying now? So you get a 140mm fan included at the back as standard, and then at the front, 2 more 140mm fans. These ones are RGB as well, which will look great. You do still retain 360mm rad support at the front of the case, and of course, a tempered glass side panel, which isn't tinted, which I also like for a white build. We don't want to darken things up. Means that we can see inside of the case without any problems. Oh yes! The grey accents are occasional, but tasteful. I think I would have personally preferred white rear PCIe lane covers, if I'm being honest. Although I don't mind this sort of dark silver at the front of the case. I think it looked actually quite classy. Radiator is going to install at the top, motherboard onto the motherboard tray. So what are we waiting for? I'm going to lay the case down flat, I think, for this stage of the build. Grab out the included accessory box. This has got all the screws and stuff we need to actually put the PC together, and then lay the motherboard flat into the case so we can actually screw the whole thing together. It just matches so well. Of course, don't need the dust filter on the top of the case because we're using this as an exhaust. And looking at everything, I think the radiator at the top definitely makes the most sense. Going to install the fans onto the radiator first, as these are obviously way easier to install out of the case than in the case. I'm then going to screw the radiator into the top of the case and finish things off with the water block. Little drop of thermal paste on our Ryzen processor, around about large grain of rice. I think that'll do as far as a size reference goes. And then just a case of putting the water block on. Now this is quite easy, so you just hook it over the pre-installed brackets, and that's it. Now you do need to tighten up the screws. Don't leave it exactly like this. But when I say this is actually really, really quite simple, it genuinely is. It's a really nice cooler to install, and obviously, being 280mm, larger fans should run a bit quieter, matches the build well. But so far, this is all going very easily. Maybe a bit too easily. I should stop being worried at this stage. Something is due to go wrong any moment. Next up is the GPU. Now, I'm going to give you guys some slightly weird consumer buying advice. I'm using the 4070 Ti, which I think is a good pick for this build, but you shouldn't buy one. The reason is because the 4070 Ti Super is rumored to be landing soon. Nvidia are reportedly set to be releasing a 70, 70 Ti, and 80 Super variation. They could actually be quite promising cards as they build on a good platform that definitely has some legs for improvement. And if it helps with price competitiveness versus AMD. That should help to bring cards like this stunning, look at that, Aero 4070 Ti design back into the fold. Personally, I think this card looks absolutely superb. And if one thing Nvidia have definitely got right with 40 series, it's the power consumption. Really, really efficient cards. This particular card has 12 gigabytes of video memory and is kind of unmatched when it comes to the AMD competition. The 7800 XT is probably as close as you get. This wins out in some instances and loses out in others, but obviously does cost a bit more money. Now let's just hover it in and get a bit of a sneak peek. Oh yes, what are we saying, Dan?
I'm saying yes.
I'm saying yes too. Second and third PCI lanes need removing. That's this one and this one before slotting the card in. This is going way better than I even thought it was going to go. And I thought it was going to go well. Yeah, boy. Here we go. Slide it in. Bit of pressure. Get that click into place. There we are. Lovely stuff. Screw those screws back in to secure the card down and then admire your hard work. All there's really left to do to wrap things up is pop the power supply in. Now, I have gone for a white PSU. No surprises there. And to be honest with you, while the model is a good model, the wattage is way overkill. But it's the only real white one I had that would work for this build. So don't buy the 1000 watts. I'll link like an 850 down below. That's all you need. Even 750 for a build like this would be perfectly adequate. In terms of PSU, Thermaltake ToughPower series. I've been using quite a lot of their power supplies recently. Been pretty impressed with them. ATX3 as standard across basically the whole range. So open up the bag of included cables. These are also white as well, so we haven't got to buy any extra PSU extensions if we don't want to. Grab yourselves out a few of the key cables that we'll need for this build. Motherboard cable is the first of those ones. It looks a little something like this. Also going to pop in a CPU power connection. So we've got two 4-pins or an 8-pin here. Need our Gen 5 PCIe power connector. This one can deliver up to 600 watts. Definitely don't need that many for this build. While a SATA power cable for any RGB hubs, any coolers, anything like that is also good to pop in. Thinking about it as well, an extra CPU power cable, as this board actually has a 4 and an 8-pin, is also going to be handy. And once all the cables are in, we should be able to plug the PC up, turn on the power switch. I haven't yet done the front panel connection, so I'm going to need to jump start the PC with a couple of the pins down the bottom. Here we go. Is that going to work? Aha, there we go. Fans are spinning. No RGB as of yet, but I think, yes, all the fans are indeed connected. RAM's lit up, and some RGB at the front. Have we got RGB at the top? I can't actually see. We do. I think that looks amazing. What do you guys think? Let's close out with a few glam shots of this PC all powered up. I think it's looking even better now it's turned on. Got a bit of cable management to do. Need to sort the screen out on the water block, and then of course we can take a look at performance figures. But first, how good it looks when it's all powered up. I'll see you in a few. Moving through into performance, and it's time to see what this 4070 Ti based build is made of. And what better way to start than with Call of Duty's Warzone 3, one of the newest titles in our list, which we tested at 1440p high and used DLSS at the quality preset in this instance. Here we recorded an average frame rate of just under 150 FPS. 90 and 99 percentiles were also pretty good too, and as ever, all the frame rate data was gathered using MSI Afterburner's Riva Tuner and NVIDIA FrameView. In Call of Duty's Modern Warfare 3, we saw a fairly significant frame rate uplift, quite surprisingly so, over Warzone 3. Here at 1440p high, once again, with DLSS set to quality here as well, the build achieved over 200 FPS on average, 209 frames per second to be precise. This to me indicates we'd have plenty of headroom at 4K if we wanted to push that little bit further, but I understand most people building this system will be more concerned with 1440p gaming performance. In Starfield next, we saw good results once again, 1440p high, and this time the build dropped down to just under 100 frames per second on average. 97, 82, and 70 comprise our average 90 and 99 percentile results, with a few more frame drops here than we'd like, but pretty consistent frame rates overall. It's a similar story in Hogwarts Legacy 2, 1440p high, the build achieved over 120 FPS on average, with 112 and 98 for the 90 and 99 percentile results, while tuning down to 1080p competitive settings in our next title. It is of course the latest update of Fortnite, and the build smashed it out the park with 284 FPS on average. Of course, Fortnite I'd recommend probably playing at 1440p, but I wanted to give us that 1080p competitive FPS number, really to test CPU bottlenecks more than anything else. What do you guys think of this build? Would you pick up any of the parts that make it possible? If so, check out the links in the description below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.